Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Welper?
Here.
Motion to approve the agenda is proposed.
Second.
We have motion and a second on the agenda. Is there any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Today, our discussion, of course, is on the 2017 budget. This is Management Information Services and IT. So, Chris, take it away.
Where do we start?
Just kind of walk through them a little bit.
Okay. Just a little bit of background here. Our department obviously exists to maintain the city's computers, network, and technology needs. My department is myself and Mike Ruff, who is our programmer analyst. So, department of two. And then we do get some outside services from the Waterloo School District occasionally. That's been pretty minimal the last several months, but they help us out as needed. Let's go to the accounts. The first account, we go down here to the 1319.
We're going to start out with revenue. There's not much there. So.
Okay. So on the revenue, the
Just have 14.
$1,445 in revenue.
Yeah, from Waterworks for phone service, basically.
Okay, for the phone service that we
Mhm.
provide to Waterworks, so they,
Yep.
a little bit of a payback there. The refunds, nothing over here,
Nope.
so nothing on the refunds. So the 1445 is the total for the revenue on that. Skip over the mayor section.
This would be personnel.
Okay. Under the expenses, salaries, 164,528. The longevity pay is 1,060. Time and a half pay was 3,269. FICA is $13,071. IPERS, $15,079. Life and disability insurance, $790. The employee benefit reimbursement, $2,000. Health insurance, $35,904. For a total, under the professional services, salary and benefits total of $235,701.
If I could ask a question or two here, Chris, just out of curiosity, the identified amount with the waterworks, so is that something unique that, because don't you do work for all the departments?
This is, well, the Waterworks is not a city entity.
Okay.
It's a separate entity, and this is for the actual estimated cost of the phone service. It's not for support in terms of his time. It's for what we pay for the lines.
Oh, do we still have, and I haven't looked at that part of it, but do we still have all the lines coming in through the MIS department? Like we used to do that, right? They had like a $70,000 phone bill or something, everybody else had nothing.
You'll see that.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And then, the 164,528, that's you and Mike, is that correct?
Correct.
Mr. Ruff, okay. And previously, when we had the 64,015 and the 158 and 16, that was that combination of Matt O'Brien and Mike Ruff?
It was just Mike. We
That
were
was-
contracted with the schools. Matt was not a city employee. So there was,
So it doesn't show up in this line.
it doesn't show up in the personnel section. It would be in the contracted line.
Oh, okay. All right, thanks.
Did the base, you went back to the base level? Is that, did the mayor reject hiring a guy? Is that what happened?
We decided we really weren't ready with that proposal yet, so.
Okay. I mean, is that why it went up and then now it's back down to the,
Yeah,
So up on top there, that one person you're adding, you're not adding,
it's,
at least in this proposal.
it's not in, right.
It's not budgeted, okay.
Right. So if you go to your line 1319 on the next page, that is where we were paying the school districts from, and we are still paying for some services provided by the schools.
We're projected to spend that much, 96K.
There are some projects that we might want to undertake that he would need additional help with, either from the schools or outsource somewhere else.
And that may not just be school district, there may be other vendors.
Sure.
But that would be for outsourcing of other vendors.
Can we back up just a little bit to the expense again? Can you just tell me a little bit about the health insurance, the 58,000, 35,000, what's the change there?
We had projected adding an employee, and then we took an employee out.
Okay, thanks. And that went up, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking down at the bottom.
It went up from 16 because we only had one employee in 16, and now we have two. So this budget, it's difficult to compare 15, 16, and 17 because we were using a whole different model. 15 and 16, we were outsourcing most of our functions to the school district, except for one employee that we retained. Then what we did last summer, I can't remember the date now, time flies when you're having fun, we did, last budget time, actually right about a year ago, the schools told us they were not interested in providing the IT director position any longer. So we started looking, and we're fortunate enough to be able to hire Chris as our own employee. So that changed this whole budget comparison. Now we're back to two employees on the city and using the school district somewhat less. But during that time that we had the school district, which probably the schools felt like they got more work than they asked for because we added the sportsplex and the public works building. So we added two very large facilities that needed to have all their computers, phones, everything was all new and upgraded during that time. So I think our need for some of that support is greater than it probably was 5 years ago.
So on the count 1319, the adopted budget in fiscal year 2016 was much higher after my hires, and then it was amended and was dropped considerably.
So yes, if you look at account 1319 and compare the amended budget column to the adopted, you can see the big difference in the reduction. And it took a little bit of time, you know, you paid the school district at the end of a quarter, so even though they weren't providing a lot of services for us necessarily in the first quarter of 16, we still owed a quarter of services provided in 15. So it takes a little while to work yourselves out of that. It doesn't have any other line items.
There really isn't much in here. I mean,
We
that-
do have the phone. I mean, you
Yeah.
can see the telephone and fax expense. That line does track our phone service that we have to buy.
That's for everybody in the city?
Correct.
Then do we bill people? I mean,
Departments
yeah, departments?
allocate to the departments for
Allocate.
that?
We don't.
Okay,
That's why you see what you see here. Otherwise, you
Sure.
wouldn't see that expense.
okay.
Michelle, is that for all departments?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. I mean, wouldn't it make sense that the ones that aren't 810 subsidized, wouldn't we charge that back to them and get it out
It
of road
would, but I
use? Or
was told that we don't have a way to allocate the cost at this time.
Who told you that?
I I believe that was probably school district employees. I don't know that
Oh,
Chris and
okay.
I've had that conversation, but.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that yet to see if we can.
No big deal,
allocate
but I mean,
that to,
sure seems like that's something.
There
I'd
might
be
be
able to
some
do.
reporting things that we can
Sure.
do, if that's,
It's all numbers.
Have to
Yeah.
use the percentage of the overall cost on some of it, because some of it is, based out.
I don't
but
think
you
we
could-
know which departments use a lot of phone time and which don't. And I know that I did ask fairly recently, because I wanted to know numbers of calls for code enforcement, and I thought I was told the system doesn't do that kind of tracking. So I don't, I have to have some way to allocate it.
You can.
I don't think that, like, I'm
I
going to
know
use you
the-
as an example. IT is a very small department, and I don't know how many external calls you actually make in a day. So I wouldn't want to, divide it by evenly across departments, because we know some are incredibly heavy users and some are not. So I need some mechanism to allocate the cost, and I'm not aware that we have one today. I won't say we don't have it. I don't have it.
yeah, and I haven't been asked to look into it, but it's something that we can
Yeah, I mean, you
certainly
could do it
look
pretty
into.
easily. And didn't we, within the last couple of years, didn't we sign a new contract that I thought reduced our monthly bill pretty dramatically, didn't we? I thought that last contract we signed with, I don't remember now if it was Windstream or,
Yeah.
We're
Pay
with
deck.
Quest now, and surprisingly, the cost is staying about the same. We've gone down slightly in terms of long-distance calls with the switch to VoIP, because long-distance calls were charged out to the departments. We no longer really have long-distance charges, so there were little bits of expense that were scattered across 20 departments that we no longer have. So there is some savings. I don't know if it's even $20,000. It wasn't a great deal, but there certainly is some. Surprisingly, this, for the basic service, has stayed pretty flat. We did move some alarm lines to this budget that used to be charged to the building they were in. We did that intentionally because when we switched to VoIP, nobody knows about those alarm lines. You have a building that does their own function, but this alarm line is just there and people don't really manage it. IT is the department that understands what that's for and how to do it, but with all the changes in personnel, they weren't always aware of all those lines. We felt it would provide much better service to have one department responsible for all those lines. So we did add a few alarm line fees to this budget, which I think is providing us better control and accuracy of expense. So it is interesting. Our phone expense has run somewhere between 75 and 80,000.
Okay, thanks.
Pretty regularly over time.
It's,
and that does not include your cell phones, correct? You do
This does
charge
not
those
include
back
cell
to the
phones.
individual departments.
Correct,
Good.
because we have a mechanism. We have the numbers. We know which departments have those.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank
even
you.
if we did, sometimes
No,
it would
thank you.
make sense to do the allocation. I mean, it's not like we're gonna save money unless you think you're gonna impact behavior by charging it to a department, they'll use less calls.
If one of our non-property tax funded departments was a very heavy user, and I could move half of this expense to a user fee,
Right.
I would like to do that.
So they're a different
But
funding stream.
Right.
that's my point, yes.
mean,
I don't know that that's the case.
You're ultimately paying, forgetting long distance for a minute, you're paying for 150 phone lines, basically, is what you're paying for here. And of those 150, maybe 50 of them go to departments that wouldn't be funded by the 810 levy. So that was the only reason for my question. They could
Good
charge
question.
off.
Good thinking.
I have a question. Why does it say Department 01 Mayor?
This was set up probably at least 20, 25 years ago, that this department has always been under the mayor's department. We have not moved it because if I move it in the software, I lose the history.
Okay.
We could.
But he stands alone, he doesn't, yeah.
Well, you're looking at,
Yeah.
this is his own.
Yeah, okay, that's what I
Yeah.
meant. I kept thinking I was in the wrong page.
We have a few anomalies like that, and I don't know why it was originally set up this way. And
Better-
it could be moved if we had a year, maybe this would have been a good year. It wasn't very comparable anyway, but we didn't move it.
That a really good IT person could figure that out.
Any other questions?
I think we will find out over the course of this next year and with some of the things that Chris has implemented with the team and other things about some of the greater needs that may be there as well. So I think gaining respect, he has covered a lot of ground, meeting with different departments, meeting some of their needs, communicating, being an excellent resource from what I've seen in my short tenure as mayor. So we definitely want to give him a thumbs up in those regards. So he's been a great resource to the entire city, and that's gaining, and people know that and feel very comfortable with the services he's providing as well.
I think you had mentioned that, I don't know, it was Councilman Jones or who it was, and you were looking at better utilization, or maybe not better, more utilization, for lack of a better term, with some of our other departments too. I don't know how that's going, but
Yeah.
love to hear about that whenever it's noteworthy.
We've just started technology, don't have a great name for it yet, but we're working on that.
Didn't
But
like the one I had.
well, it's at the top. A technology team, and one of the things that we're looking at is resources, not only kind of what applications and programs departments are using that others might be able to take advantage of. We might be able to see some cost savings, sharing applications, quantity of scale type of things. But we're also looking at the people resources that they have to see if there are people in a certain department that are kind of the IT go-to person before they would call me. At the very early stages of that, but to see if maybe there's a possibility down the road of utilizing those people, not only more in their department for some IT things, but getting them out into other departments as well. So it's, like I said, it's very early, but we're going to investigate that to see if we can utilize people we already have before we would hire someone else. So,
Who's on the team?
there's almost one person from every department.
Okay.
And a couple of department heads, but a lot of our frontline workers.
So everybody's kind of involved.
Right.
So is it just the library and the PD that have their own computer person, or do some of the other departments have a quasi, semi?
Well, the Waterworks has a person that's kind of their IT go-to person. And I work with her very closely on things, but she takes care of most of the day-to-day things at the Waterworks.
Culture and Arts has a person that works with some of their software, someone in the clerk's office with the Laserfish, other
I
departments.
think every
when we talk
department
about
has
the
kind of
GIS.
that person,
Right.
but they're not specifically hired.
Right, so GIS, so, really good group, diversity of types of experience with regards to computers as well, and technology, I should say, overall.
I was pleased to find out at the Waterworks Board meeting that they bought a bunch of that document saving and GIS and stuff that the engineering, they kind of thought, let's buy the same thing that everybody else buys. If we could get more of that.
And that's what we're really working for on that technology team, and as a kind of a subcommittee from there, the subcommittee started before the actual committee, but we have a GIS team that we also assembled to look at how GIS, Geographical Information Systems, which the Waterworks is using, Waste Management is using, engineering is using, all to varying degrees. But we've met, we've talked about what everybody's doing, so we want to see how can we expand on that and use those quantities of scale for maybe some cost savings instead of everybody kind of doing their own thing. Let's centralize that and broaden it, make it more accessible for everybody that can get a piece or use a piece of that, so.
The airport bought a server the other day. I thought all our servers were
They are, the airport isn't connected via fiber though,
Oh,
so
okay,
they're
okay.
kind of
Okay.
out on their own, so it makes it difficult. I did investigate that, it's a couple years away, I think at least, so they needed to get some upgrades. But I think what we're getting is when eventually they do get on fiber, we can pull that equipment and put it back into our data center.
All right, thank you.
One last question. Is this, and I see this a bunch lately, the charge back to the sewer fund, that's for them doing IT stuff for waste
Right.
management or
They
something?
have, they use our network and our servers and Chris's team's support, so we are charging them to do some of that.
And that comes out of the garbage fee, right?
Not the garbage fee, the sewer fee.
Sewer fee.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
There's too many of them, but
Yeah,
yeah, we're
but-
charging the sewer fund because they have quite a bit of computerized technology out there.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Who's here for the next one? Mayor's budget. There's two positions. As you all know, the increases were due to salary increases as well. Previous mayor was not covered by IPERS, so that is a change. Let's see what else.
And was that a personal choice, or what was
Yes.
that? I guess I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, that was his choice.
Okay.
We took a look, decrease in from the 1319 contractual services down, took a decrease with regards to line item 1344 telephone as well. But actually, the portion that I have in there for travel budget is not even close to what I think that I'll need. So I don't know if I'll come back with something else for that. Because Mayor Clark, well, the former mayor, was part of the League of Cities. And so any of those connections, any of those things were paid by the League of Cities, if I'm not mistaken.
Some
Some of them.
were, yes.
And none of mine will be paid. And there's some other organizations that I think the city needs to be at the table as well, and other opportunities. So that is at 5. Dues and memberships are a little bit different. We're going to add a couple more this coming up year, so that charge is a little bit different. Programs and supplies, none of that has actually changed. Office supplies is decreased a little bit. What else? So the asking is probably about $4,000 more dollars than it was. Well, actually $12,000 more than there were before. Also, when we took a look at asking the same questions to other departments about absorbing salaries, and in addition to taking a look at 2% and 5%, that was a little bit challenging for this department, as I said, for other departments that were not able to do that because a large portion of their charges are salaries. So, any question?
The budget for dues and memberships from 15, man, went up 3 times.
Over the course of the year.
Are we just adding a bunch more things that we think it's important to belong to?
There's one that is actually about $4,500 more, and in addition to what we're already have a relationship with. And I think I was just going to do my best to try to find some additional funding somewhere else. So I'm actually about, what, 2,500, a little short. But I was just going to try to do my best to find the rest of that money somewhere to do some stuff. We also, what are some of the standing ones that have to come from this area? The coalition?
The Metro Coalition, there's several smaller ones, Metro Funders, Good Roads Association, Cedar Valley Coalition. There's just a number of organizations.
Alliance?
Pardon me?
There's no alliance dues? or
There
anything?
could be your chamber dues.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, and I can look that up.
But I'm just saying, from 2015 to now, we must have joined a bunch of stuff.
I think that I don't know that we joined a bunch more, but I'm trying to think when we joined the Metro Coalition. That's the biggest change we've had.
Oh, okay.
And I would say it's probably given us very good value for the dollar.
What's that cost us?
The
Mike
last
just
time-
brought it up if you want to use this. I don't know if do you have access to the New World on there?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
why I'm
Sorry, I
That's
didn't know that
okay.
you had
Could
access
you
over
just
there.
say, since he has it right here?
That's fine.
That was 15's. 15's was $4,780 for Metro.
Yeah, but, we're hoping to keep it at the same level, but that hasn't been set yet. Surprisingly, for people that know it's budget time.
So is that the $4,500 thing that the mayor was mentioning, or is the $4,500, is that a deal or
That is
a combination?
The one I'm talking about is a national organization. It's the Congressional League of Cities. That's probably like $4,500 to $5-something thousand. So I don't know if we'll find it, but I think if we need to join it, we probably need to be creative in finding a way.
Don't we belong to the National League of Cities
The
now?
National League of Cities, yeah. We belong to that one as well. And even in the travel is not even enough. I don't even know if there's enough money to cover travel there. So I'm gonna have to find a way to figure out or come out of my pocket a little bit on some of those, because the Iowa League of Cities has to come out of this. The coalition travel has to come out of this. And then also the National League of Cities has to come out of that money as well. So we'll see what we can do to find some creative ways to make that happen. And that doesn't even include some economic development opportunities that may be coming our way in the future that would put us in a really good position as a city. So there's the increase. Any other questions about that one before we get to the city council?
Nope.
All right.
And I didn't know, are we doing city council today, or are we doing that one on ours? It was in the folder, so I threw it out there.
Yeah, no, I thought we might as well,
Okay, that's fine.
if we had time, we might as well do it.
Yep, that's perfect. I said to attach it just in case, but I didn't know.
So,
So it's not on here, right?
yes.
Oh, it is,
It's
yeah.
right, it's just not that long.
Went right past it?
Driving to a
This is
small
it.
city, you better slow down or you drive right past it. But as you see, that's activity 8100. 7 council members.
I must have to get to a different page or something.
It's only one page long. There you are, that's all there is.
Okay.
So, pretty flat, and it looks like actually coming under as a savings. Is that right? No, a couple $100 more.
A couple $100, yeah, $231 more, I think.
What's $1,000 for phones?
Your
And
iPads service.
Which replaces all the printing
Sure.
he used to do.
So that, I mean, that ongoing, is that the new ones for new council members, or is that a maintenance agreement, or what's the,
That's the data charges.
oh,
So
you're
you have
kidding me.
that.
Huh.
Don't know much. Too many movies on there. So I mean, there's not a whole lot, unless you guys have questions about the council, is there?
Nothing there.
I don't see.
Is it too early to tell if we're saving any money on paper?
Not in front.
One of those things that's really hard to quantify because there's never been keeping track that this was copied for the agendas and
Sure.
all of that. I mean, absolutely, we're saving money. There's no question about it when it comes to, but is it saving enough to actually supplement the cost of this? I mean, if you talk to a salesperson, they can give me a gazillion return on investment
Sure.
Well, what's the
statistics, but.
What's the, I mean, like right now, what's the average packet size per week? I mean. we're
Oh,
able to-
yeah, I
we're
mean,
able to upload things now.
it was definitely a lot of paper, and then especially when planning would do color maps and all that sort of stuff. I mean, yeah, it's definitely reduced all of that, so.
That's gotta be hours and staff time savings, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yes, it's, especially in my office, and I know some departments will not agree with me because it has put a little more on some of the departments that used to just type up something and hand it to me and not have to worry about whether it read right or any
Sure.
of that, because our office would do all that. Now they submit it and I have to send it back to them so they can
Sure.
correct it and that sort of stuff. But yes, in
Saving-
general, it's much more efficient.
Saving you gas money.
Why does Noel have a big smile on his face? What's that
He's the one
about?
that
That's what I
gives out
figured.
the color.
He took all the paper.
Well, we need about
Speaking of math.
5 times this travel
Yes, I did.
amount.
Yep. they were
Well,
on
that's a
that.
good
Thank you very
question,
much.
right? Because we had a lot of discussion about that last year. Because I was using it,
I know, I used it all.
Where are you going now, David? Where are you going now?
I don't know, somewhere good.
South Toledo?
Where am I going?
National League of
You
Cities.
should go to,
National League of
you
Cities.
should go
or
to
something.
Owine and check it out, make sure it's still there.
Yeah.
Right. Give you a buck
Any other
25 for
questions
that.
about council?
Well, I'm curious about this training money. Are we gonna leave it there or are we not gonna leave it there? 'Cause if
Nobody
Well,
said anything
now's-
about it. Now you-
Now's
we
not,
try to
the-
use it, we
now's
wanna
not
be
the
able to
time,
use
right?
it. I mean, not individually, but we wanna be able to use it if somebody's going somewhere.
But it passed, didn't it?
No, it was a big problem
No, but
eventually.
You got to go.
you got to go, right?
Yeah.
whiny.
I think it should stay there.
It's, I mean, folks can vote, you know, as long as you get 4 votes.
That's right.
I'm just saying it's there.
Today. Might not be there on the 10th of March.
Okay. Make a note of that.
Not me. When Quentin and I went, I think we paid for it.
Line 1346.
Port City. Hmm? Yeah. Well, I said we, I didn't say you.
Who do we have up here next?
No.
The happy guy out there in the white shirt.
Don't let these smiles fool you.
That's right.
It's time to go to work.
City's here to support me, so I feel pretty safe.
You know what?
No
That's
tag
what-
team.
Before you got here, we already told him, we already talked to let's do it.
Where would you like me to start?
In the beginning.
We're gonna talk about these.
Don't talk about these? Just talk about
Page
this?
1.
Okay.
Who's the CPD director these days?
That would be me,
Oh,
That's
is it?
the-
Is that
that's
your
the rumor.
allocation?
Community Planning Development Director.
So that's a partial allocation of you?
Yes, he's
Yes.
charged partly to economic development, which is the charge to the TIF areas, and he's charged 10% to housing and 10% to the block grant departments as well, because he does supervise all those.
So in this particular activity, 5,700, that's his amount?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay,
3/10.
310.
And I thought we lost a planner.
We're still showing it as a vacant position.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, someone
Okay,
left,
okay,
but that's,
okay.
these aren't filled positions, these are budgeted
Okay,
positions.
got you, okay.
And Noel was just telling me that there needs to be an update.
Yeah, this is.
We also had a part-time planner that we were paying, so it should be at 6.8 is what we were at in terms of general fund positions.
Was that a part-time position or an intern, or what was that?
It was Don T. Meyer was our part-time position.
Still is.
Yes, still is, sorry, he's on vacation.
So you
Yeah, we
don't,
just pay him hourly, no benefits, anything like that.
so you want him back in here, is what you're saying?
Well, I mean, do you want me to go into that now?
Yeah, I thought, where's?
It's here.
Is it here?
He forgot to update these sheets.
I
It's in
mean,
the
this is
dollars.
half the presentation.
It's in the dollars.
Well, so it's all in money.
It's just not on us.
So essentially, in looking and trying to, what we were requested to look at is trying to increase, obviously, economic development work and activity in the city of Waterloo. What the proposal basically is we would be eliminating the part-time position, replacing that with a full-time position, but charging that additional funding to TIF. Because obviously for economic development, they would be working in our TIF district, so we'd be paid out of the TIF. So the general fund positions would still be at 6.8, which is the same as what they're at now. But that additional, our actual staff is seven and a half right now. We'd be at 8 staff, so that again, that part-time position would become a full-time position,
Paid out of what TIF? All of them?
all of them.
Yeah.
And essentially how we work for paying any money out of the TIF now for staff time there is it's specifically allocated out on the timesheets, so the person would put what projects they're working on, how many hours, and then it's paid hourly out of those TIFs. Again, we can estimate about how much time we think they'll be spending out of there and have done that in the budget.
And we have to rethink the way we do structure economic development deals to make sure to leave cushion in there
Yeah,
to do
and
this.
and everyone's heard the conversation about hiring a full-time position in economic development. We did a metamorphosis of many different names. We researched around the country to see what positions were effective and kind of put some things together to focus on the city of Waterloo. This person would be responsible for outreach to business and retention, making sure that businesses have what they need, making sure that if there's any type of grant funding, special programming, any of those types of things that we can utilize to help our current businesses be successful, we want to take that opportunity. This person would also have responsibility for outreach as well, working with different new economic developers that come into the community. This will also have an opportunity for some urban redevelopment in particular areas within our TIF district to make sure that we are growing business. So this person will eat, sleep, breathe economic development the entire time. We did not make a director's position. What I've heard from people is that if we take a look at restructuring the department to create this position, that would be something that would be winning to people. And the way that this is actually structured, and if I'm wrong, correct me, that this will actually have a decrease on our asking, general fund asking. Is that still correct? 'Cause it's
There's a slight reduction.
So we're not going to be hitting the taxpayers for more with regards to the general fund. We'll be able to utilize some TIF to be able to make this position a reality, but we have to be competitive in growing business in the city of Waterloo and creating jobs as well.
So we're losing T-Meyer? No part-time anymore?
That is correct.
And that position will now be, well, not that position. Get rid of a part-time, have a full-time.
Correct.
Okay, and funded by TIFs.
Yes.
Okay.
The extra.
And obviously, we can do that legally, I
That
guess.
additional 0.5 would be.
The only way we can do that legally is for them to track their time on specific things being done in a particular TIF. So it's going to be a little more difficult to budget because it will have to be, you know, if we have a big project in Midport and they're spending a lot of time in Midport, it gets charged to that. And if the next year we're spending a lot of time at the northeast site, then it's going to go
Okay.
there. But, so it's going to have to be managed, but,
And document.
and documented
And
appropriately.
he's going to be under you, or she.
Correct.
So this chart really should be 7 point something?
It should be 6.8.
Huh?
It should be 6.8 at that part.
On the
Okay.
general fund part, yeah.
Okay.
We will get those updated. but-
Sorry about that. Because then there, remember, there's multiple pages here. There's an economic development portion of it
Yes.
as well. That
Okay.
has parts in there. That'll be about 1.0. So that would put us up to 7.8. And then there's the remaining 10% from block grant, 10% from housing, which puts us at 8, which is the total number of actual staff members.
How are we going to hire this person? We going to promote from within, or are we going to?
We, working with human resources, and of course, there's union positions involved, so we've tried to structure this to leave us the most flexibility to set it up as we believe would be best in terms of using the best out of people's abilities to do certain things in the office as well as hiring new. So ideally, there would be promotions to planner 2 and hiring of a planner 1, or planner 1s.
So just to make sure I'm clear, the open planner position now has got nothing to do with what we're talking about, correct? That position is
Correct,
going to be
that was a planner 2
filled.
position, that would be filled.
Right, so it's got nothing to do with this. And this is doing away with a part-time, making it a full-time, but taking money out of the TIF to pay for it,
Yes.
basically. Okay.
Correct.
So make sure I
Half of it.
understand.
Half of it.
Half of it.
I think you said all of it, just half of it?
We're already charging some time to the TIFs, and primarily it's been Noel's time.
Sure.
So we're already charging about a half, so
Okay.
we only need to pick up another half. I don't want to push our luck, I guess, with how much we're charging to TIF. We want to make sure that as we budget, we are only able to only charge to TIF what's actually on TIF projects, so. Because there's some general things that planning does that are difficult to tie directly to TIF, even though they have to be done and they're related to TIF.
Sure.
We just don't want to get too carried away, I guess. We'll see.
So just so I'm clear, so right now we have a planner 2 open,
Yes.
and we have an economic developer director, or head guy
Coordinator.
open.
Employee.
We have
Coordinator
2
will be
people open.
With the elimination of the part-time.
Yeah.
And just kind of fully explain a little bit more what Michelle was talking about. So like Don's position now, he worked on economic development, but we were charging that to the general fund because we were charging my time to the TIFs as an exchange, I guess. We could have done it either way. It probably works out better that way to continue to charge some of my time and some of the new coordinator time out of it. That way, if the coordinator works on a project, let's say on University Avenue, which is not in a TIF, that way we're not having the problem of 100% of their times not being charged to the TIFs, because they're going to work on projects outside of the TIFs as well. But again, we believe with the numbers that we put together, the percentage we're estimating that would go to TIF will go to TIF. If that makes sense.
No, it seems to me that in the last, I don't know, 6 months, we've had some conversations. I don't remember now if it was Councilman Jones or Councilman Clark or Jacobs. I don't know where I keep getting this Clark. Asking for quantifiable measures for some of the things you're doing, and that seemed to be kind of a challenge as far as, like, I think it was number of jobs that came out of TIFs or developments or something. Remember that conversation? So are we saying that we're going to be able to get that kind of quantifiable information going forward?
We would definitely have someone that would have more time to go after that. Sometimes the reason it's not easy for us to get is we don't generally need to track jobs. So we kind of leave that up to the Cedar Valley Alliance, and again, they're tracking jobs for projects that they know, but we'd have someone that would have more time to call and find out, because there's a lot of job creation in the community that just goes relatively unannounced. If Hydrite Chemical adds 5 jobs out there, which I think they have recently, but you didn't see that in the newspaper, you didn't see that anywhere, so again, there's 5 jobs right there, whereas, obviously the ConAgras are easier to track because it's a brand new one, we have the details and all that. But even with the ConAgras, if they hired 58 employees instead of 52, we wouldn't necessarily know that unless we had someone trying to check on that on a regular basis, or unless Greater Cedar Valley did. So there's a lot of tracking of information that we think we'll have more time to go after. That's not always easy to get. Some companies don't like to necessarily share information on that, so it's not something you can always blindly call up and get, but if we had someone that was more attuned to doing that, we think, and through the, one of the things that Mayor Hart has stressed is not only kind of a more of a business visitation program with our existing businesses, but just calling businesses to inform them of programs that we have that may be able to help them to expand or to add jobs and things like that. So we'll have a lot more ongoing contact with them where we can ask questions like that.
So where we do get that number from those businesses, is that just usually where they're getting funding based on job creation, so they have to provide that information?
If there's any, generally with economic development, if there's any state money involved, since the state is primarily paid through income taxes, all of their state money is based on job creation, job retention, and so there's certain reporting that they have to do for the state, as well as the state obviously can track it by those income tax numbers and all that. Whereas all of our development agreements for the city, our direct benefit is property taxes, so we're not usually tracking the jobs, even though we'd like to know, obviously, if they're adding jobs and how many they're adding. We don't necessarily track them later to see where they're at.
Isn't one of the pieces that the Alliance presents to us every quarter, that they have a existing business visitation thing that they go out and say,
Nate Clayburg has been doing that now. Before it was Linda Leyland. So when Linda left, and you recall, they hired 2 staff for a short time, and they ended up both leaving. So there's been a little bit of a gap in the business visitation program. I know Nate has picked that back up and has been working to try and meet with as many as possible. And when he does meet with them, he'll share information with us.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
So no, there's no, I guess, mechanism in place to be able to track those jobs right now? Is there potential to put a mechanism in place to be able to track?
I think so. I think as we're having more and more conversations with the existing businesses, that'll be a question we'll definitely want to ask. And if they want to share it, that'd be great. If they don't, we'll find out. But, again, it's just kind of that more regular conversation as we have a staff person dedicated to it 100%. And that's obviously been one of Mayor Hart's goals and emphasis to me as we look to restructure to do this, is to make sure, in the past, especially now with being down a staff person, if we get a heavy agenda and we have staff reports we have to get out, and of course those are monthly meetings, and then we have weekly council meetings and all that to get things ready for, it's easy to say, hey, you economic development person, come help us with the staff report for this. We won't be doing that with this new setup, and we haven't been doing that with Don in his position as the part-timer, so it's something that we're committed to, and again, that will dedicate and free up that time for that person to have more conversations, more time with businesses.
And if we take a look at even some different offices around the country with similar populations, if you think about the multiple things that they do within the planning department, and having Noel as that lead person, he's working with other entire departments, but also, does he really have time to sit and track that type of information? You have the planner one, planner two that's dealing with, ordinances and dilapidation. You got another one that's dealing with brownfield. You have another one that's doing this. You have people in the department that have so many different things that they have to do on a daily basis. By restructuring this and trying to get that information, being more accessible to businesses. Of course, Noah will still be involved as a major player in some of the big opportunities, making sure those things go forward. But having that person that's dedicated will be able to maybe help us to get some of that information that we need to have and hopefully improve our business climate as well, so that we can be more responsive to some of those job creations. So the hope is that we'll be able to obtain some of that information, but I believe that Waterloo itself needs to be aggressive in our approach as well.
What are you going to call this position?
So for union purposes, it'll probably just be called Planner 1 or Planner 2.
Oh.
Then we will give them the
Okay.
title of Economic Development Coordinator.
Because they're going to be part of the
They'll have
union?
it in their emails, on their cards, in their
Okay.
mailings or whatever that they're working on, so that they'll have that clout to try and get people's attention, obviously, that we're serious about helping them.
Is an associate planner a planner one?
Yeah, we're changing that, it seems to confuse people, to be quite honest with you, and a lot of other communities have gone from the associate planner title to Planner 1. It's essentially the same if you look at the duties and similarities statewide.
Then what's a city planner?
City planner then is basically the person in charge directly of the Planner 2s, Planner 3s,
Okay,
things like
okay,
that.
okay.
And we'll get an updated something.
The numbers are here, we just don't have the narrative.
So the planner two would be 2.5 on this, what you're saying?
The Planner 2,
Because you said the bottom was 6.8, so 2.5 or something.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's correct, and the other .5 is going to the activity system.
Yes, 2.5.
Okay. No, I get it now.
All right, so we've gone through 5,700. There is, you want to keep going?
Ken, let's see, what is
I
next?
don't know if you have any questions about revenue or anything else in there, or ready to move on, I don't know.
Yeah, revenue, I think the main, if there's any questions on that?
We need to up that to $1 million. So revenue, saying, charges for fees and services is next.
We leave that bus bench, I thought we'd get rid of those guys.
We're continuing to work with the feds on that, to work out a solution. Ideally, what we're looking at in terms of this fiscal year, we don't believe there'll be much impact to this fiscal year as we work to basically transition out the old bus bench system is what we're proposing, and transition a newer one, to try and get better service for snow clearance and all that. But we don't want to just take them all out and all of a sudden have a lot of people that don't have the ability to sit down and wait for the bus stop. So we'll be kind of transitioning them out. I would anticipate, the way the discussion is going, that it'll be a reduced number or possibly a zero in the next fiscal year.
No, your rent and property leases, is that primarily farm?
Yes.
All or primarily?
There's farm leases in there, there's cell tower leases in there. We have a cell tower out at Midport and on city land, and we have one at Burns Park. There's another one proposed at Morris Park that may be dead. And there's also something else on there, I forgot it. Oh, and the
Building.
UniQ lease is on there. So we own the UniQ building and UNI rents that from us.
15 to 16, it went down. 10 grand, is that because we developed some farmland that we were no longer able to rent?
Exactly right. And that, and, you know, as we're looking to, I think the one year the council wanted us to rebid out all the property. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, depending on how the farm economy is going.
Sure.
We just rebid it out, I think, 4 or 5 different locations this year, and they all went up.
They went up?
Yes. We were a
Really?
little shocked. There's a little more competitive bidding for them than in past years. A lot of times we'll have one bidder, possibly 2. I think for 3 of the sites, we had 3 or 4 bidders, so that always, competition helps.
So the revision then of the 17, the $9,000 increase, where is that coming from? From the 136 to 145?
I believe that was, the new bids came in while we were working on it.
That's that?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
Plus, we just bought some more farmland too.
I mean, normally, isn't that the kind of thing you'd mention in notes below, and did you just not have time for it, or is that not
I
to that
did not.
level of?
They-
Okay. I mean, I don't want to waste your time asking
no,
stuff, but I'm not seeing it anywhere, so.
What's the salary reimbursement that?
We are contracted by Blackhawk County to do their planning and zoning.
Oh.
So we run their, basically enforce their zoning ordinance, we do the permits for them. We also run their Blackhawk County Planning and Zoning Commission and Board of Adjustment meetings here, their night meetings. But we're essentially reimbursed by that on an hourly basis that we submit back to them.
At sale of property, is that like the old central garage, for instance, if we sold it? Would it
Correct.
go in that account?
We're also working to identify as much excess property that we have for some other parcels to sell in a given year. You know, essentially property sales, you know, a lot of it we sell for $1, obviously for development purposes. There are some parcels that we've had over the years that we believe are in a competitively well location that we will still probably go through a development proposal packet where we would ask for a bid plus what they're going to develop on it, so we can look at not just the high bidder, but getting something taxable on there. A good example of that is off of Green Hill Road a number of years back where the Ferguson retail location is located now. We bid that out. We had one bidder bid, I think, $35,000 for it. The other one bid $20,000, but he was going to build a 100,000 square foot building, or $100,000 building on it, that a little electric building. And we went with the $20,000 one because, again, with the building being built there, then we're getting taxes every year, so it easily surpassed the $35,000. We have some other locations that we're looking at that we think that we can competitively bid. The central garage would be one to review. We also have some, obviously, with the state's or the judge's decision on 306.23, we have some other smaller parcels that we'll be offering out. We're going to have to appraise them and all that, but we'll see how they sell.
That $3,000 parcel we sold last Monday, goes in here, for instance?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well, no, actually, that one goes in the other, because that was a 657A.
Oh, okay. Goes in a different
The one on
account.
Mullen.
Yeah.
But the one on Dubuque, where we just did a vacate, I think we just got an appraisal back for that. We sent it to the gentleman that wants to buy it, and it's about $3,000, I think it's $2,800 or $2,400 or something like that.
Okay.
So their line items are pretty much the same in total. Okay, ready?
Go to the next one.
I think so. Which is,
Next one is 5750, which is a recreation area development. So essentially, we receive funding for the mining of Brinker Lake or East Lake, whichever you'd like to call it. That's done on a per tonnage basis with basic materials. There's actually a second site that we lease out to Aspro back behind their plant to the east of Highway 218 there. They don't take much out of there. There's a $5,000 minimum for them to reserve the area. They take a little bit out of there per tonnage, but the primary activity there is basic materials. They probably have at least this next fiscal year of work there to continue to mine. Then they may be very close to being done with our property. So that one may be going away in about a year and a half.
So that's $612,000, that's since 97, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And there's no value to mining the Cedar River? Or
We have
that's,
discussed that with them. We'll continue to discuss it with them. The primary problem with mining the Cedar River is, and I don't want to blame the DNR, but there's regulations about as they take the material out, they can't have it sitting in certain areas, or there's not a very good location for it to sit and all that, so it's a little bit more difficult. They have, years ago, back in the Riverfront Renaissance, was starting, Sherm Lundy with Basic Materials was looking at they did some core samples to look at the materials in there, and it's usable material. It's not as usable as what's in Brinker Lake, but it is usable material. Again, I don't know how successful we'll be. We'll continue to talk with them about it. They can probably continue to do some work up at Brinker Lake as well and move on to private property to the north if they just want to stay in that area. And obviously, they have a lot of operations and been there for a number of years, so they may choose to do that. But we're continuing to talk to them.
So there was a comment that the soil or whatever in the river was contaminated. That's not accurate?
It wasn't contaminated, it just wasn't as usable or the correct
Okay.
geography.
Different quality.
Geology, I guess.
We still make,
Geological standard they want.
we still making a connection to the Cedar from Brinker Lake?
We're still looking at that. There's still funding for that in the MPO enhancement funds. Because, and for those of you that are new, especially Councilman Amos, the city of Waterloo received a certain, or the MPO, which is City of Waterloo, Cedar Falls, Evansdale, all the urban areas in Blackhawk County receive a certain amount of funding per year in federal road dollars. We take that to the organization called the MPO and then decide how to kind of split that up. The funding is allocated per population, so we all kind of keep track of who should get how much, but we work together to get certain projects done. A certain percentage of that has to go to non-road enhancement type projects like trails. And so when people are talking about, hey, you could have spent money on this instead of this trail, sometimes that's not accurate. Sometimes the only thing we could have spent it on was a trail. You couldn't use it for roads. So we have some funding in there right now that we have, I think, in fiscal year, I think it's 2017 or 2018 for the potential connection to Brinker Lake of the Cedar River. We're looking at that. AECOM was hired to look at that. One of the things when you're dealing with the floodway areas or the rivers or actual bodies of water, you have to do what's called a no-rise. So if you're doing projects in there, you can't cause any of the water levels to actually rise. So as you're looking to build a bridge, because there's a trail there, they'd have to build a bridge over that. The difficulty is to bring in fill and all that to build the bridge, but you can't bring in more fill than you're taking out to make the connection. So they've been trying to put those quantities and design together to do that.
Is there still talk of the underpass on 63 or Logan to fill that and go over the top of the
That is the
track?
design that they are choosing to go with as their number one design.
So the sand from the
And
Cedar
I can
could go
actually send
there?
you some emails on that so you could kind of see that. We've been working with Ritland Kuiper to kind of put together some enhancement designs along that, because obviously that would be a major change to that area to all of a sudden have it go up. Granted, the part near the railroad pretty much has a park on one side and kind of some older commercial buildings on the other side, so it's not next to a lot of residential, but there's some residential in close proximity, so we obviously want it to look very nice aesthetically for people visiting the city, but also for the current residents.
I was just thinking of the sand from the Cedar, if that could go there.
If it could go in there.
Yeah.
Again, it would probably just depend on the quality of that material to be used for fill.
No, do you have any idea why there's water on Logan again, right there at the overpass? Something going on there, do you know?
At the underpass, you mean?
Yeah.
Probably
That's
spring.
That's a
kind of-
mystery.
That's kind of the $20,000 question, and that's probably why they're gonna do the overpass,
Yeah.
is they
Yeah, I thought they'd gotten that
have been
fixed for a
unable
while.
to ever figure out exactly why it's always wet there. If there's a spring there or something. If you remember the drought, I think, 2 summers ago, I drove through there a couple times just because it was a drought and it was wet. So there's something wrong or amiss there, I guess.
You know, I always, I live over in that area, and I always kind of wonder if maybe Verdon Creek had something to do with that as far as the seepage and stuff that's going on there. But-
Well, and that's a good point. That's a major discussion point because, of course, that pumping station is right there for that reason of keeping the water, groundwater down in that area. And of course, it's been that way since the 60s. So as they're looking to do the overpass, the question has been, could they just eliminate the lift station? The million-dollar question is, if you do that, what happens to the groundwater in that whole area? Does it flood people's basements? And so at this point, they're planning to keep the lift station in operation because they don't know what would happen if they took it out. But again, they'd have engineers high above my pay grade level to understand that stuff that can't figure it out yet, so. If we want to move on to activity 5885, which is city property management, so this is essentially, our aggressive approach of going after dilapidated houses through the 657A program, and our maintenance of all those lots that we have. Obviously, we have close to 100 lots that we now own. And kind of going back in time for those of you not aware of it, so before 657A, the city would go in there and we'd demolish these dilapidated houses because they were dangerous structures, they were nuisance structures to kids in the neighborhood, or vandals would set them on fire. We would go in and we would demolish them and we'd put liens against the property. The problem is, of course, a lot of these structures were owned by tax sale buyers out of Arizona or California or Wisconsin that had absolutely no intention of ever doing anything with them, and so they'd sit there. We'd have these liens against them, but no one's coming along to buy them, so the liens wouldn't get paid back. Well, then the lots weren't being mowed, so Waste Management back at that time would be out there mowing them and again putting further liens against them. So the city was basically taking care of the lots, but we didn't even have the ability to sell it if someone came along and wanted to redevelop it. Through the use of 657A, again, the good and the bad of that is, yes, we have some city responsibilities to mow the lots, to remove snow from the sidewalks and all that, so it's a costly venture, but we gain ownership through this. It releases all mortgages and liens and everything against the properties, so we have the ability to try and work with developers to get them developed. And we think that's the best way to clean up blight. I know that Dave Zellifer has given numerous discussions with other city attorneys on how we're doing this. We're #1 in the state at doing it, which is good and bad news. That means we have a lot of structures out there that need help. At the same time, at least we're eliminating those nuisance structures. So obviously, one of the tasks that we're always trying to work on a little bit harder is to eliminate or to convey some of these lots. And it's not quite as easy as just calling up the neighbor and saying, hey, do you want to buy this lot? By the way, we'll sell it to you for $1,000. Well, in some areas, you may have landlords that really don't want more land or anything to mow because it's a nuisance to them as long as they can rent out the house. You may have homeowners that feel, hey, the city comes along and mows it once a month anyway, my kids can play on it, so why would I buy it? So we're always trying to work with them to try and enhance and work with these smaller lots. Obviously, with the buildable lots, we're trying to find developers that would come in and build new homes on there. And, we have some ongoing projects right now that we think that'll help try to push, as we get more housing throughout the city. Hopefully, that'll help with our infill development as well. Another thing that's included in here, of course, is we had some larger lots. We have worked very extensively with the Waterloo Community Schools over the last 5 years or so to help them with, as they demolish the older school buildings and replace them with new ones, we were taking some of their older lots. They don't have the staff to kind of work with developers, so we were taking that responsibility on for Baltimore Field, Williston Field, Irving School site. The former Lincoln site, if you haven't driven by it, looks great now. So again, we're really working hard to try and fill in some of these unneeded tax-exempt green spaces throughout the community and get them back on the tax rolls.
No, I'm going to return to 519 East 3rd Street and that area, Walnut area, and this is the second one of these budget sessions that we've been through since that first came up, and yet there's no agreement. And I just want to call attention to the fact that the developer who wants to work on that is not just talking about one property, they're talking about 3 to 4 properties. And the longer we delay, the worse things get, like what we heard the other night from Mr. Marshall. And I don't know what it's going to take, but there needs to be movement forward on that for the benefit of that area, that whole area. And it's a win, to me it's a win when you make that agreement. There may be some things that are different, but when you're talking about possible $1 million project going into that area and a redevelopment of that area, if the historic designation can come to that area, to me is a big positive for downtown area Waterloo and the city of Waterloo overall.
And I would agree. We've been talking with the state about some potential grant money to do the historic study. For those of you who aren't aware, we acquired the 519 East 3rd Street property through 657A. The House of Hope was looking to go there. They changed their minds. We have a JSA that would like to acquire the property and fix it up. They're also looking at 1 or 2 more houses in the Walnut Court neighborhood area. We have, as you may recall, we have a specific 657A sale of property policy that was put together to cover a little bit of our costs for this activity of 5885 that requires them to pay $5,000. Originally, that was put into place to make sure that they were serious about development. We didn't want to take a property, acquire it, have someone come along and say, I'll fix it up, deed it to them, have them let it sit there for a year, and then have us have to go through the process to acquire it again. So we really wanted to show some commitment. What JSA has asked for, they probably asked for about 5 different things that are a little bit different than what our policy is, so we're trying to find out what we can work with them on, because obviously we would sell it to them today according to the existing policy, but they've asked for more. One of the things that I think makes some sense is that they're asking for the $5,000 to be refundable upon completion of the project, which again would potentially help us show that, hey, that they're responsible, they've paid it, we'll refund it at the end of the project. We get a nice finished house, it's a win-win for both of us. Some of the other things they've asked for cause a little bit more. They're asking for direct funding help from the city of Waterloo. Obviously, the majority of our help is generally through rebates or tax incentives. So that way we're giving back what we're not getting down now because that's additional tax revenue created. It's a little bit more difficult for us. As you can see by the budget, there's not a lot of money in here other than what we need for bare bones maintenance. There's not a lot of money in here to just say, here's an extra $20,000 for you to fix the house up. So we're definitely working with them. We've informed them of course, the Enterprise Zone program was replaced by the Workforce Housing Program with the state. If they do at least 4 units, they will qualify for that, which would give them a 10% investment tax credit, a refund on state sales tax for construction materials. So again, there's some other avenues for them to get funding back on this without the city having to come up with direct funding to help it. But again, we're more than willing to help them on that. And again, I believe with the grant funds to go after the historic designation or study of that area, that'll achieve some of their purposes. And again, if we can get grant money for it, it helps the city of Waterloo taxpayers as well.
I think you answered Pat's question a whole lot in depth. This is a budget hearing. Just so there can be some more conversation, because hearing about there's another proposal that's put forth is different revelation, and that's something that needs to be taken up at another time. So I'm just kind of leery about talking about other things right now and going too far in depth with that for what we're doing right now.
You can give me the be quiet. No,
I'm just saying, that doesn't just, I'm just saying general questions about the sale of particular property and where that's going to show up, I think we're good. But when we go into talking about structuring a deal and they came up with this or they did that, I think we're moving a little bit too far what the purpose of today is.
Mr. Mayor, one of the reasons why I brought this up was also in conjunction with buildable, unbuildable lots and the 657A policy, because my recollection is several months back, maybe even a year ago, there was conversation about that policy and the money. And to me, that has a direct bearing on the city budget when it comes down to changing that, because I had heard people on the council talking about the need to sit down, discuss, and get a new policy worked up, and that hasn't happened.
I absolutely agree with you that that is a relevant conversation right now. The structuring of a particular deal, I don't think is relevant conversation now. That's all I was saying. You know, talking about JSA or another company right now, that's to me, that's a little far what we need to do for here. But talking about the for sale policy and all those things about raising revenue, expenses, I think that's a very applicable conversation. But that other part, I want to hold the line and focus on the nuts and bolts of this budget, not the individual compartments.
No, what's 106 East 11th Street? What building is that? You're talking about American Patterns maybe buying it.
That is the former food bank.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, real quick, talking about the 519 East 3rd Street, is it out of your budget, the 657A, or is it out of code enforcement to button up these buildings?
It is ours.
Pardon me?
It is ours.
It is yours.
Dave Zellifer, I think, covers the legal fee costs for actually going to court. Otherwise, once we get them, they're ours.
I don't remember if you were at the meeting that night, but I thought, we were discussing moving code enforcement to the library, and I made the comment that, so they'd be going from there, driving around the community, they'd have to drive out to the waste management site to get the plywood, blah, blah, blah. And we had a discussion about, is that what they do? And I thought the answer was yes.
So their staff would actually be the ones to board up houses.
Okay,
We would normally be the ones to pay for the materials and all that.
but not their time.
No.
Gotcha. All right, thanks.
So following up on that, so who actually is following up then on this, and out of whose budget does that come? Who is the one that actually does the work on it? Because
On the
the
boarding
work's
up?
not getting done.
On the boarding up of the
Yes,
building?
yes.
My staff, I talked to my staff to go ahead and direct code enforcement to go board the house up. And he said he was going to do that Tuesday.
So it both in your court?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you think a building needs to be boarded up, come yell at me.
Better be careful.
Get in line.
Not all of you at once.
Get in line.
I had a quick question. I don't know, Mayor, let me know if it's not relevant, but the 657A houses, we have several of them that the city owns, correct?
Yes.
Do you have that number, and what does it cost to tear one down, and where does that money come from?
I do not have the number with me. I know we're close to 100. And before we tear down the houses, we take a 657A, we try to have the building staff and the community development staff look at it to see, is it rehabable? Do we think we could sell it and have someone fix it up? But sometimes we'll even invite private contractors to come look at it. And of course, over the years, I think we've sold about $80,000 worth of buildings that we've acquired. And one of them was in Greenbrier, another one was in the Logan area. Obviously, our goal is not to tear down houses, it's to try and get them fixed up and get them back, as a positive thing.
But those that are
A lot of times,
totally-
the ones we go after have been vacant for years. The roof may have caved in 3 years ago, so it's been raining inside, so they're not fixable. So we do have demolition funds that is bond money that we estimate the amount we need per year. And then I guess that's what the funding is.
But that's not reflected in your budget?
Correct.
As far
Yeah,
as the
that'd be on the
dollars?
bonds, that'd be in the CIP process.
And we don't get any CDBG money for that, is that correct?
And no, that's a good point. Actually, we work extensively, so CDBG will generally have some demolition funds as well.
Okay.
Their money's a little bit more limited as to which ones they might be able to go and demolish, so we work extensively with the CDBG money as well to, if we can use that first, we'll use that. If we can't, we'll use the other city bond money. And again, just depending on how much we have in each pot.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, just one more quick question, not to belabor the point, but that house at the corner of Iowa and, not Lime, Iowa, and you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
They got moved from.
There's one of the 63 houses that were moved.
Yeah, what is the status of that?
So he is fixing it up. We were in court with him, I want to say 3 months ago. Mr. Zellifer did release the court action against him because he is fixing up the house.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a snafu now that apparently he was trying to turn it into a duplex. Of course, there's a process for you to go through and do that, and he did not apply to that process. So I think it's just about ready to go as a single-family home. If he wants to try to make it a duplex, he has some more city boards and commissions to go through.
Thanks.
Ready to move on?
So the next activity is 6100 Economic Development. So again, this is the area that would be paid out of the TIF. As you can see, about 50% of my time in general comes out of there, and again, that's specific to an hourly amount based on the timesheet and the amount of projects that I'm working on in that area. And then the new Economic Development Coordinator position would have 0.6 out of here, yes, or is our estimate of 60% of their time would be funded out of this.
Just have special projects.
No.
Could you just put in their special project, yeah. Yes,
No, where would the, on the budget, where would the line item be for historic studies be? Would that be in this activity or some other activity?
we would actually propose that would come out of bond money through the CIP process, or it would come out of TIF money if it was in a TIF area.
Okay,
So-
and, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, not to get too specific, so if it was the Walnut Court area, as an example, that's in the Logan TIF, so it would either come out of, as a project out of the Logan TIF, or it would come out of bond money. And again, when Michelle sells the bonds, things are, as you'll see in the CIP process, or you have seen, things are pretty specific as to what is sold in there for bonds and their uses. Specifically for economic development activities, they're taxable bonds versus non-taxable bonds, so they're not easily switchable with, like, say, engineering's bonds. If I think they have too much, I can't necessarily take their bond money, dang it, to use for my stuff.
Trying.
But also, it wouldn't be wise for the city to take the economic development bond money and use it for an engineering project either, because the taxable bonds cost more than the non-taxable. So they're kind of separated out.
Did I hear you correctly, though, say that there was going to be some applications for grants for this?
We have been talking about this with the state. I think, did you talk to the state as well? Somebody else had talked to the state from the city of Waterloo anyway, when we contacted her. But
Right.
we're looking at that for the Walnut Court area.
And you're following up on that then?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
So no, item number 6050, that's the part-time person, we're taking the money out of the TIF to pay for that, and that's what that is, and then it's
That's
reflected again down below in the
transfer.
salaries, that's what that's about, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have to have the expense in the general fund, and then we transfer the TIF revenue in to
Right.
pay for it later. That's it.
I think that's it.
He's got a little bit of money left in some special project fund that he has, but that's it.
Yeah, there was a sale of land going back in time, the old GMAC project out there off of Tower Park area. When they didn't do the expansion, they had to pay the city back for some land, so we bought them enough for an expansion, so we had some cash in there to use for economic development projects. And I think we're down to $981 or something like that. so.
$1,000 today. Yep.
Michelle says I cannot use that for pizza, even if I talk about
Right.
economic development, but I was gonna bring it tonight for you, so, you know.
I don't want any of that.
That's
pizza.
why. Only if it's cheese, it's Ash Wednesday, no meat.
David wants it for travel.
No pizza
I was
while you're
thinking
traveling.
about travel. I really was thinking about that today.
Oh, yeah, you do. You need it for travel.
I don't know, it's a long walk. If I leave now, I'll be there in time. Any other questions, Councilman? Great job. Thank you for being here tonight.
Do we need to do the impact statements? You want to talk about anything there, or it is what it is?
think it's
I'm sorry.
5 feet.
Do you
I
want
would-
to talk about the impact statements at all, or just they are what they are, and you don't want to whine or anything?
And Dinah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
More pizza budget.
you know, I don't know the exact percentage. I mean, our budget is probably 98% personnel. So obviously, the impact statement, to have any kind of a 2% or 5% cut, we would have to lose a position from where we're at now. You know, what I tried to point out in my impact statement is obviously all of the monthly and weekly obligations that we have, you know, with the P&Z Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, the council actions, the Board of Adjustment, Highway 218. You know, our staff also attends a lot of Main Street meetings to try and help them out as an organization. I think Eric Schrader right now is the person that attends those. I think he goes to about 4 meetings a month for their various committees and commissions. Again, with the Blackhawk County contract, so we have night meetings there and we go to their Board of Supervisor meetings when we have actions on there. The MPO meetings are monthly. We also have the permit counter, so essentially, we're signing off on all permits that are not just interior work. If there's any garage or additions to a house or new construction, obviously we look at all commercial building permits, zoning calls, floodplain administration, the property management for the 657A takes a lot of time, brownfields grants that we're applying for, the CIP process. So again, you know, the tough part of if we lost a position, you know, we would need to eliminate some things. Some of the ideas I came up with was eliminating the Highway 218 Design Review Board and have the Planning Commission take over those duties. Look at the Historic Preservation Commission becoming a non-city staffed entity, similar to the one at Cedar Falls, which is just kind of a non-city function. We'd ask that we do acquisitions for all projects now, so if as a part of the consent decree, as they're doing a lot of these sewer improvements, we're the ones that go out and do the acquisitions for the projects. If we had to reduce staffing, I would ask that other departments do their own acquisitions for projects. We'd cut down our Main Street attendance to probably 1 board meeting a month, lessen our time for property management, so we wouldn't be out there to go after nuisance properties as much. Property sales and economic development, you know, obviously are priorities to us. At the same time, when you have monthly obligations, it's harder to get to necessarily the projects you want to work on. Property sales are a little more sporadic. Economic development is obviously a priority, but if we have to meet a monthly deadline, we have to meet a monthly deadline before we make a proactive call to a business and all that. So I just noted the main impacts would be on our ability to help in economic development activities.
But I think one of the things, and Pat kind of alluded to it, and others have alluded to it, is once we restructure this department and have that person that could work on 519, work on some of those other smaller projects that could market some of the property we have in an effective way. I know Councilman Schmidt has asked for that for a couple of years now, about marketing some of the property, getting rid of some of those things, and just putting that polish on what we offer to the community. I'm hoping that our actual revenues, if not this year, the following year, we'll be able to show some gains in revenue that's coming through that department as well, and some decreases in some areas where we need to let some stuff go. So that's hopefully, you know, taking a look at the outlook of this department is increasing that revenue as well.
How long have we been doing what we're doing for the county? Is that something that's been going on for 10 years, 20 years, or?
At least 20 years.
Okay. And do we charge them basically just an hourly rate, so it is what it is, or?
Do you remember, Susie? We actually charge, there's a little bit more.
Yeah, we charge for salary and benefits and.
And is it like a 3%? It was,
Yeah,
It should
we
be.
changed it a couple of years back, because Steve, you're exactly right. We were kind of charging just the bare bones, and of course, it's more than just paying the
Right.
bare bones. You know, you have to have a staff person that's trained to do this and all that, and.
Insurance
So we
costs.
actually raised it a little bit, I think, to cover some of the benefits and salary benefits and insurance costs, and then there might even been another like 2% above that we felt was fair to
But it's
citizens of Waterloo to do this duty.
certainly
Wanna
not
be-
profitable.
Want to be
thing.
equitable,
It's
just
covering
at least break
expenses.
even, so, okay. Thank
This
you.
is a, this
Motion
is
for
an addition
adjournment.
to that. Oh, I was just gonna say that they also do building stuff.
All in favor?
He's not done, he's not done. He's a rowboat, Marco Rubio.
I was gonna say the county, engineering staff and building staff also do things for the county, so it's kind of a group package that I think it really helps kind of that cooperation between entities as well.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ron.
Your turn.
Motion's been made with the proper second. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. Thank you.